here with Linda Lamontagne. She's just an amazing voiceover casting director, and you know, her credits could go on for years, so we're not gonna bore you with that part. But some of her recent projects include Undone on Amazon, which is a very interesting, different type of animation than you might be used to seeing. BoJack Horseman, of course, which is just ended. She does a lot of work on Cartoon Network, so she's kind of like a little bit all over the voiceover spectrum. So we're going to hear a lot from her today about what that entails. And as people are still joining, I do want to start because it's kind of the elephant in the room. Right now, everything is stopped pretty much except for voiceover. I mean, people are able to do some user-generated content things that people are figuring out, but the only thing that's kind of been able to continue somewhat normally is voiceover. So on your side of things, what has that experience been like, and have you noticed a huge change, or has it been kind of business as usual?
No, I actually have noticed a big change. A couple of things. It depends on where we're at in the process of the show. Some of the shows we've done most of the original records already, so they're just kind of stalling out, waiting for the gates to open again so we can go back. I've actually started new projects in the middle of all of this where I'm able to, people are able to self-record, thank goodness. And honestly, it doesn't need to be a huge expensive setup for the auditions. I always tell people your car is an incredible booth, your clothes closet, blanketed door facing the door. So if people can self-record, and I've also done Skype auditions where I Skype them, not always great. The audio's not so great, but it's better if I get their homegrown audio. But yeah, I've been able to kind of plug along. And so it's interesting because I've started a lot of new projects, and I'm actually starting one this week, a brand new 1 hour animated that's kind of a psychological sci-fi thing. Yeah, very cool. Yeah. So and what's great is animation is it's not just all comedy. It's going in all different directions, as with Undone, which I thought I've been so proud of that project. The writing is impeccable, and I actually see actors that have auditioned for some of these shows popping on the participant list. So hello to everybody out there who's actually auditioned for me. Thank you for continuing to do so. Yeah, so yeah, it's actually, it's nice. It's booming. A lot of people who haven't done animation, who are casting animation, is now getting into it. So I think there's more opportunity there. And the people that haven't, actors who haven't considered voiceover are now considering it. So the competition has gotten a little more fierce. But it's this last project I just worked on called Harper House for CBS All Access. The people that auditioned actually won the parts instead of the make offer people. So that was fabulous. So there's opportunity for everyone.
That's always encouraging to hear. And speaking of the participants, before I forget, so I'm going to talk to Linda for a little bit, and then we're going to open it up to audience questions. Make sure to use the Q&A box. I already see the number going up a little bit. If we put questions in the chat, we will not see them. So make sure to put your questions in the Q&A box, and we will get to as many as we can, as many as we have time for. But before we do that, we are going to talk a little bit about your projects, and that will probably come back to a lot of process stuff and a lot of how things are happening now. But you were just talking about how voiceover and animation has changed a lot, both like in the last couple of years, but also just I think there's just been a gradual, slow change to kind of the tone that people are willing to accept from animation. Mm-hmm. So as a casting director, how does that affect the type of talent you look for, the places you look, and what are some considerations you have to make for something like Undone, where we do sort of see the actors, versus something that is more traditional that we're not going to be seeing the actors at all?
Well, first, I'm an open book. If you can get to me and send me an email, I will audition you, because there's usually something going on all the time. I'm always looking for somebody. If I don't, then I have a file that I keep that I go back to in my emails, and so I blast my email out to in different areas and say, if you can send me an email, as long as you do it once. Not if you keep doing it incessantly, then I can't receive emails. It blocks me out. I call it Gmail jail. They lock me out. So I tell people, please just send me one very brief email, with your contact information, and then when I have something, I'll email that out to you. The cool thing about animation, and I think a lot of it is that it's accessible. You can self-record, and that's kind of part of my thing. If you're given all of the information, and I'm very thorough about what I say in my specs, how to label, how to submit, what email to submit. And if people can follow those instructions, that's great. That's a telling sign. One, they take direction. Two, I also get sort of a sense of what they can do. And I usually will say, oh, this project's more conversational, more natural, and I'll cite examples like BoJack Horseman, or it's more SpongeBob SquarePants. It's more broad. So I try to be as clear as I can in my specs, so that when somebody gets a material, and I also suggest looking at the project. I try to give the whole package, like all the different characters that I'm working on, because I like people to try multiples. Sometimes agents don't give those. I find out that they just sent just the one role, and I'm like, no, because you can't get a full sense of the character, because sometimes it's just lines. But if you have lines of how the husband is reacting and the son and the daughter, then you're going to get a better sense of who the mother is. So that's one thing. If it's my project, it should be a whole complete package. So if you have an agent that's sending you the material, ask for the complete package, especially if it's me. And if it's from me. Sometimes I don't always tell people. But with that, when you get the complete package, I'm hoping that it's sort of like what I consider the pre-read, that you get the material, you get a sense of it. I get a better sense of you because you have all the direction that I have, and you're able to find, maybe the humor or the drama or whatever in that piece. And then it gives me a sense of who you are, and then I can, escalate it. I keep every audition. I don't throw anything away. I listen to every single thing. And I can go back to it later. So if I have a part that I don't have time to put out auditions for, which is a lot of times the case because you have to cast within a week, then I'll go back and pull up auditions, go, oh yeah, I really like that person. Let's see if we can get them to either quickly lay it down or, let's offer it to them. And I'll present those auditions, go, I know this is not the material, but this is what, here's what I heard and how funny they are or how dramatic they were. Did that answer? I think I answered two things.
That was great. I asked like 5 questions at once. I realized once I was done talking. So that was a great answer. And I am curious because I think a lot of people who are used to doing maybe both live action and animation or voiceover, or maybe they just don't really have any voiceover experience yet, but they want it. I did read some questions. How concerned should people be with how they look, and like, especially on a project that's more just a traditional animation? And then what should actors know when they're doing something that's similar to Undone, where their physicality comes into it a little bit more?
Undone is like live action casting. Honestly, it really is live action casting. And I actually on Undone, I cast literally every single part, even down to all the extras. So that one, I actually had people videotape, or I brought them into my office and taped them. I went and searched in like the Malibu temple. I was sliding notes to Indian families because I needed a specific region of India. And so I literally ate at every single Indian restaurant, scouring kids and families. So yeah, that's live action casting. That requires camera, audio, and yes, look does play a part in that. But she was so open-minded. She she didn't, Kate Purdy, who's incredibly talented, and Raphael Bob Waksberg, who helped um, co-produced actually. Um, they were great about talent. They weren't very rigid. They were very open about what they wanted. And if I brought something different, they would entertain it. So that was an amazing thing. It harkened back to my live action days. It was nice. The voiceover, I think in auditioning voiceover, I always tell people um, it, go a little faster when you lay down an audio voice audition, just a little bit faster, because I think if you slow it down too much, it's like dead and it flattens out the comedy. It's not, I always think faster is funnier. Um, and because you don't have visuals, we're staring at a 2D image. If we do stare at it, um, that's all we have. So I think it's important to go just a little bit faster and project a little. I always say use your theater voice, like you're doing theater and people in the 21st row needs to hear you. So that helps a lot in animation for animation auditions. Um, so looks aren't an issue. The one thing one of my goals, and I have failed miserably, is there are so many people who are how do I say, physically challenged. So there's diversity there, which I've tried, but I didn't try hard enough. And so that's kind of one of my goals, is to try to get more more challenged people to lend their voice in voiceover, because I don't think there's I've tried. There's a wonderful agent, Gail Williamson, who represents a lot of people, but I think there's more out there. So I welcome anybody who's challenged, and I hired Marlee Matlin before for animation, which is kind of cool, for Family Guy. I did that. So I think it can be done in any kind of, if they're blind or deaf, or have some physical challenges. The only obstacle I think in that is if the booth doesn't accommodate like a wheelchair or something. So, but sometimes we'll make it work. So that's what if anybody out there is listening and knows any actors, please send them my way. And right now I'm looking for zygotes. So anybody that can speak 4 languages, it's only one word, one sentence, 4 different and 4 very distinctively different languages. Pick their own. I welcome that right now too. So
in those situations, like you were saying for Undone, where you had to find someone like a child that had a specific dialect, where have you looked? Where are places that, it's not like you can just write an agent and say, does someone speak these 4 specific languages? So what are, tell people where are some of the places you've searched?
Well, I do. I actually reach out to agents, managers first. Then I start searching the internet for anybody that's a zygote who can speak multiple languages. With Undone, this Tamil, it was Tamil language that they had to speak. I actually reached out to and just recently I worked on a project called Gi Happy, where I reached out to every Indian person I could think of. Then I looked up every famous Indian person and asked if they had relatives or cousins or nieces or sons or friends. And it was great because amazing people turned out to help. Like Archie Punjabi actually recommended somebody, and I reached out, like Siddharth Danaje, I reached out to, like a lot of great people. Ranjit Chowdhury, who just recently passed, which I was so bummed because I got a commitment from him that he would be open to Gi Happy, and now he sadly passed, but he was a sweetheart. So yeah, agents, managers, I went, like I said, went to Indian restaurants. I went and found a website that was devoted to Indian culture, and they had a film festival in Long Beach. So I drove to Long Beach and stood out in front of the theater, hoping families would go there. I didn't see that many. But yeah, so anywhere and everywhere, I'll turn anybody. If I thought they had an Indian last name, I was lawyers calling them saying, do you have any family that want to audition for this? We even tried we thought a lot of when you call like Verizon or AT&T or something, and you get the call center, and there's a lot of Indian people in the call center. I even tried them. I tried actually even reaching out to Mumbai, not Mumbai, Mumbai. So everywhere. Thank you. Sorry, postman. Oh, I lost your audio. Uh-oh. There's no audio. Should we go to chat? Okay, no worries. I'm standing by. Can you hear me though?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, now I can hear you. I heard the mm-hmm. Nope, I lost
there
you.
we go. I'm sorry, I got the rainbow wheel, which is the worst timing ever for getting the rainbow wheel. And I was frozen on mute, so I'm gonna stay unmuted. But I could hear you and you didn't freeze, so that was great. But okay, so I think that it's important and encouraging for people to know that, especially when you're looking for something specific, you're not just gonna stay in your house and say, you know, I'm looking for this very specific thing, and you know, if an agent doesn't represent you, then I'm not gonna find it.
I will find it.
Yes, you will go. I remember, because we have met before, and I remember you have told me you've written people. There seemingly no limitations to where you're willing to look if you're looking for something specific. And on the topic of, you know, finding a family or finding someone younger, your projects, you know, are varied in tone, but also audience. So what are the differences to you when you're casting for an adult audience versus maybe a Cartoon Network show or a movie that's going to be directed towards families or kids? What are there differences, or are things, you know, pretty much the same when concerning casting and what the actors need to do or know?
It's interesting. I try not to set limitations, but I think sometimes, like if the sad part is sometimes if somebody has a bad background, if they've had some scandal, you can't bring them to a show that's generated for children. But I always try to think second chances, you know, unless it's a repeat offender. And it depends on how serious it is too. But I think I approach both projects open-minded that way. And I also don't kind of corner myself into the voiceover thing. I try to look at all the talent as talent, as opposed to, oh, they're good in voiceover. But I try to get people to do multiples, because a lot of the times you'll have a series regular, and then you have incidental characters you have to cover. And budgetarily, you can't afford to hire an actor for every role. So you have to double, triple up sometimes. And so it's really important that when there's an opportunity to showcase your multiple talent, you know, doing various voices on a role, I personally welcome it. I mean, even if it's you're only auditioning for one role, if you have 3 different takes of it, you know, of the character, go for it, you know. And please, one big thing is like pay attention to the specs. Like I don't love readers. I think readers can upstage you or pull you down. So and we like to focus solely on the voice. I don't want to distract my producer or people making decisions with somebody else's voice. And the other thing I always tell people is slate in your own voice. If you slate in your own voice, it gives you another opportunity. And there's a case in point where I was auditioning one project. I can't remember the project, but I had all these incredible auditions. And then all of a sudden, a part of Taylor Swift showed up in Family Guy. And I went, oh, wait a minute. There was a girl that slated her name who sounded just like Taylor Swift when she slated her name. So I pulled her in. She got the part. She did a great job and became Taylor Swift. And that was off of her slate. It wasn't what she read, and she hadn't read for the part. So that's important. And just make sure you're able to be found too. Talent. Label your projects with your full name. I don't love when people put their contact information on a slate, though. especially if I'm playing it for producers. They don't need to hear that. We try to keep everything concise and quick and moving. So yeah, I just think make sure you label and definitely slate your name on audition files. It's a big pet peeve of mine.
So you will remember people, even this person was reading for a different part, and you remember not only her audition but the fact that her slate was in a specific voice for a different project maybe, or just a different part. But that is impressive.
For anything. Sometimes I'll note if something jumps out at me when I'm listening to their audition, like, oh my God, that person just sounds like so-and-so. Let me keep that in mind. Or even like recently I was watching Upload, which is incredible. And Robbie Amell, there's points where he sounds like Tom Cruise. I'm like, oh, he sounds like Tom Cruise. Okay, if I get stuck in that Tom Cruise thing again, because I had to cast a Tom Cruise sound alike, then I was like, oh, he's a good guy to remember. So note to self, Linda. Right, I write a note to myself. This is keep that person in mind. Or else sometimes now I'll write into their file label when I keep their audio. Sounds like Tom Cruise, or I'll put something in there that when I search my computer I can find it. So yeah, so when you audition for me, it's not just a one-time audition, it's a forever, especially if the audition's good. I'll find you, I'll get you something.
And someone might not know what you can hear in their audition that they can't hear in their audition.
Yeah, and that sometimes happens with auditions when you tell somebody, like several times they'll send something to me and I'll go, oh, you got to redo this. Here, look for this, and this, and then they'll send it to me, and 4 or 5 times we'll go back and forth, and I'll finally get what I love. And sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't, but at least it shows me that they want to do it, and if they turn it around quickly, that's even better. The thing with animation is it moves so fast. There's not a lot of time. If you wait 3 days, you could miss out on an opportunity. It really does go fast. So it's important, if you get the material, turn it around quickly.
Okay, so it's almost time for me to turn it to the audience questions. Before I do, there's a lot of talk about how a lot of these auditions happen remotely. You talked about, record in your car, record in your closet, pad with blankets. But if some of the people watching, or, just in general, if someone then is asked to come in person and doesn't have the comfort of their own home and doesn't have, the fail safe of being able to take a few takes and give you the perfect one, what can they expect from a voiceover audition, and how might that be a little bit different from what they're used to for a live action audition?
Well, I don't look at them, so you're not stared at. I'm usually looking away, listening, because I hear better if I don't look at you. And I actually recommend that if you're studying to audition for a show, look at if it's an existing show, listen to the show. Don't watch it. Listen to it. Listen for tempo, rhythm, projection. Some shows like Real, a couple of shows I've worked on recently where they really want sort of a very realness, where they want the kind of thing that I'm doing now, where you're sort of thinking about it, and it's not on the page, but you have to add it. So that is something to keep in mind. That's another option. Another secret of mine is if you're trying to play young, raise the microphone. If you don't think you can find it, raise the microphone. You don't need to go into a squeaky voice, because we like real. I love authentic real, and I think there's like very few people who are adults and can sound authentically like a child. There's one in Melbourne, as a matter of fact, I just found recently, who I was just blown away by. Turned out to be a 35-year-old woman, and she sounded just like a kid. I was so impressed with her. But I think with Undone, I do live auditions. I do a videotaped auditions, and I have to stand there with a camera and stare at them. But I try, when it's a voiceover, I usually I have it on Pro Tools. I don't look at you, and I just have you read into a microphone. So that's why I think the self-recording is okay. Except you don't have the benefit of me, but usually that's callbacks or or if somebody I feel like has gotten close but can get closer, then I'll reach back out and say, here, let's work together on this. Or if it's somebody brand new I've never worked with, I'll try to work with them. And some people say it's a master class, which I feel bad because they come out sweating, but they're happy because they felt like they've given it their all. So no, it's just that I don't look at them. I listen. And that's key too. If you're laying down an audition, listen back to what you recorded. And it's okay if you send me multiple takes. I'm okay with that. Totally okay. Not everybody is, but I'm okay with it because I'll eventually cut it together if I have to. So I hope that answered that.
Yeah.
Around a
Well, and it actually, one of the first questions that I saw, it kind of flows nicely into that. Someone asked, can you make it as a voice actor by only using the voice you were born with? Or is it necessary to learn and perform various accents to succeed? You kind of just said no. But, you know, should someone, if they can't, you know, manipulate their voice naturally like some people can, is that something they should work at so that they have more options in their arsenal, or does that not necessarily matter?
I think people that have one, there's a lot of people that I hire that have one voice, too, but I think you have more opportunity if you can flex your muscles and create other voices. I think if somebody in comedy, if somebody's very funny and they have a unique voice, and some people are very unique voices, like Kristen Shaw has a very unique voice. She works all the time. She's just damn funny and incredibly talented and wonderful to work with. So I think there are opportunities. You just, if you have a single voice, then perfect your chops, you know, so that you beat those. And I mean, the comedy wins if it's a comedy. The acting wins first, I think, then the voice, because you can always manipulate the voice. They also cheat sometimes and manipulate the voice in the record session. They'll pitch shift, or they'll speed up or slow down here. So there's some tools out there to do that. I don't recommend people doing it and setting it in as their audition. I think authentic is better. But yeah, I think having the ability to do more, or just be so good at your craft, you're so funny or you're so dramatic that we must hire you. It's okay.
Yeah, that is, someone else asked if, you know, there's someone who has a, you know, a unique quality to their voice, and people tell them all the time, you should get into voiceover work. But if they're not in the industry, then what steps do they take to do that? And you said, I mean, you have to be good at acting, and if it's comedy, you have to be good at comedy.
And find all the casting directors that do animation and send them, you know, we all still accept mail. A lot of people use Actors Access. I personally don't, because I think it's not fair to use one service. I'd have to give it to everybody, and then I'd get like quadruple submissions and I would die. So to go over, because it's a lot. I mean, I probably get 5,000 to 6,000 auditions per project. And I do listen to them all, and it's in real time. I can't fast forward through an audition. I have to literally sit in real time and listen to everything. So I prefer just one, you know, submission per actor, as opposed to having 5 of the same submissions, because it kills me. But I think we're all reachable. You can find all of us, and just send us a note, send us a link to your work. Tell a story in different voices if you can. You know, just you don't have to have a professional animation demo either. Although animation demo people will probably kill me for saying that. I think they can be manipulated, because I had an engineer boyfriend who did, you know, he didn't do that, but he could easily do that. So I actually I look at comedy reels, I look at drama reels, I look at chat shows. You get a lot of personality from chat shows. I think I wish I had a lot of time to listen to podcasts. I don't. But if there's a podcast that you're featured on, send it, you know, whatever. Or if there's copy that you are willing to audition, I'll happily send out copy for a part. I don't just send you a copy just to do an audition. I actually let you audition for a part. So.
And that sort of also, there's a lot of questions about equipment, which I think that we can't get too deep into it. Otherwise, you know, that could be a whole separate hours-long conversation. but people do want to, I mean, people are concerned. They don't have their own recording studio at home. They don't have all of the highest tech, whatever it is. How important is that? Someone said, how important is audio quality when self-recording an audition? And like, what do you expect people to do and have in order to give themselves the best chance of success?
Well, it's not just equipment, it's the room that you're in. That's why I say a car is a really good dead space, because when you close the car, it's airtight. It's a dead seal. Snap your fingers. There's no ambient. It's not echoing all over the place. As long as you're not facing the glass. Don't face the glass in the car. Just sit in the back seat and face forward. Not a convertible. Those are not airtight. A simple, seriously, room is big. That makes a difference, because if I get something that somebody's put reverb and echo or they're in the bathroom and it's bouncing all over the walls, it's really hard to hear. It's hard to listen to. So, and honestly, the mics in phones right now are so good, especially iPhones. There's also very inexpensive mics that you can get, that you can put on your phone, that aren't horribly expensive. But I really think that being able just to record in your phone in a clothes closet or in your car is terrific, as long as the space is dead, and you're not yelling into if you're going to yell, pull the phone back, so it's not blasting out. But no, I think it's I don't think you need to run out and buy all that expensive equipment. The only problem right now is, because of this COVID-19 pandemic, we are doing a lot of what we call we're Zooming, and we're recording from the Zoom, although that digitizes and glitches out like we experienced here. It just drops and then you lose the audio. So we always have people on their end recording on their phone, and we're using that audio, but we're only using it for temp. Netflix, Titmouse, Amazon, a lot of places are now putting together animation kits. And they're running out and getting, some of them are doing little tents, some of them are doing compressors. I mean, they're getting really into it, where they're sending all this gear, iPads, mics, not to plug one company, but there's an Apogee Mic Plus 2, Mic Plus, that actually works for phones, and it's both Windows and Apple based. That's reasonable. That sounds really good. But like I said, the iPhone mic is fine. It's totally fine. I've had run into situations recently where a very well-known actor doesn't have a computer or a phone. So trying to figure that one out right now. And that will probably be a later post-record, because that one needs to be broadcast quality, because that is for a show. So, and I think technology is going to recognize this and improve their equipment so it can be broadcast based. Quick story, on Family Guy, there were two scenarios where, and this is way before any pandemic, this is many, many years ago, before we had major stuff. I had to talk a Fox affiliate guy in Portland to drive 3.5 hours to get where Patrick Warburton was staying for the summer, to get a couple of lines, and he ended up using a DAT. This is the old days when DATs were around, but he brought a DAT, and they recorded Patrick in his RV, and it worked. You couldn't tell the difference. Same with Drew Barrymore. We had to go to her and pull up and I think that was maybe in a phone. I think that, they made it work. So, but it was minimal recording on that. And that was years ago. So, and technology is much more improved. So I'm sure soon someone's going to come out with, or even apps to clean up the audio so clean that you can't tell. So yeah, don't go out and, yeah. Unless you're doing a regular show on a regular basis, then I think you baffle everything and you get, the materials, but it's hard to soundproof a place, studio quality. It really is. You have to flow to floor. It's very expensive. So it's right now for auditions, phone in a car, phone in a clothes closet. Not a huge, massive clothes closet, a small clothes closet.
So long story short, yeah. So for an audition, what you have is probably fine. And if you do get cast on a show, there's a chance that they're going to send you equipment anyway. So don't do the whole thing of outfitting just in preparation for a potential voiceover career?
Yep.
Okay. There's been a few versions of this question, kind of for different qualities of voice. A couple people have said that they speak English with an accent, various accents, or, you know, they're an adult, like you were saying before, that has kind of a childlike sounding voice. Do you have advice for for people who maybe don't have like a flat American accent and, you know, there's no normal voice, but, you know, like a traditional sounding voice? What are ways that they can, you know, take advantage of the quirks that they have the best way to get a role? And when should they be aware that maybe their voice isn't the right fit?
Well, you know what? I always believe that if somebody's good, you can change sometimes the role. You know, it's not, they may say this, we may say this, what we want here, but, and I usually try to say I'm open to everything, unless there's recently at Harper House, I really was trying to be clear that was no Southern accent. For some reason, everybody read Arkansas and did a Southern accent, which I couldn't believe it. I was like, it didn't say that. Why did everyone do that? And Arkansas, not everybody has a Southern accent. So I was really thrown by that. But I think they heard Bill Clinton in their head or something. But then Hillary doesn't have a Southern accent. So I was like, wait a minute, she lives in Arkansas too. So yeah, but I think anybody if they, well, it's always good to perfect one. If there's a way to like watch, a lot of people learn accents from television. So if you can find a show, most of your situation comedies, and kind of mimic that and learn it, or sing songs. People sing in American, even when they're British, you know. So I think it is good to have that skill. I think it's important because there's not a lot of roles that have a lot of accents, but it doesn't hurt to try it. Unless somebody specifically said, if somebody specifically says in the description of the character, this is what it is, it needs to be Latin, it needs to be this, that, then if it doesn't say that, then try it. You know, you could change the course of that character. It doesn't like Stewie has a British accent in a family of New Englanders, and not everybody in that family has a New England accent. So and families now, not everybody has an accent. Some people do, some people don't. So I think it only opens your opportunity to showcase what you can do. Because even if I'm looking at that role, then I'm like, oh, that was interesting. That person speaks Hungarian or has a Hungarian accent. Keep in mind, when I need that Hungarian, I'll find that person to audition for the Hungarian role. So I think, oh, somebody said love Stewie's accent. Yeah, it's awesome. Rex Harrison is who he followed or mimicked. Yeah, so I think try it. It doesn't hurt. Just don't do it on the same take. Do it as a separate, you know, audition file. So that way, if somebody can't cut it, they have a separate one. But I'm always game. I love when people try new things. I'm totally game. So plus you want to stand out. You want to stand out in an audition because you're listening to thousands, and you know maybe 70% are doing the same exact thing. And if that 20% or 30% does something different, they stand out.
So people shouldn't necessarily assume that unless it's specifically written that a show that is an American production necessarily requires the most perfect, like, neutral American accent.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Or sometimes people, it depends on how they write their breakdowns. But I would try it and send it because it doesn't hurt, unless they get mad that you're sending too many auditions. It depends on who the person is, not me. I would rather hear a lot of them because I'm like, oh, look at the range of that person. Keep in mind, you know. So, yeah. And a lot of people in these chats, I'll be able to see this later, right? I can read this later on this little.
I'm not 100% sure.
Some people that said they can do 5 accents. So any of those, you know what? Can I do something really quick? Mm-hmm. Here's my email address. Okay. And I'm kid you not. I will track those of you who email me multiple times, and I will block you. Okay. But if you want to audition, especially those of you who said they're zygotes and can speak multiple languages, because I saw a couple of them. And if I can't read these back, here's my email address. I'm going to repeat it 3 times. That's my name. And please don't email me all at the same time. Like give your, somebody, if you're A through D, email me, in 2 days, because I'll get Gmail jail. So I don't want to be in Gmail jail. So A through D is like, day 1, E through G is day 2, H through L is day 3, M through whatever. Break it down that way in like 8 categories. Just figure out your alphabet and go by your first name. Okay. But my email address is linda.lamontagne@gmail.com. Yeah, it's that easy. It's linda.lamontagne@gmail.com. So anybody who wants auditions, send me your information, very brief, and I will make sure you can audition for stuff. And it may not be immediate, because if I feel like it's right, I'll send it immediately. It might be a little bit later, but I do have multiple projects starting. So I will definitely keep you in mind.
When you say not too much information, I feel like people should know specifically what information do you want if they're gonna email you.
Please don't I don't need your life story. I just, if you want to say I am, I like the people that say I can do a Vietnamese accent, I can do this, and it's more language too for the Zygote thing. But I'd love to be kept in mind, something very simple. And if you want to attach your resume and headshot, that's great too. I'm old school. I like those things. If you have a link to a demo reel, I'll listen to it, send it. But it doesn't need to be a long, lengthy letter, and it doesn't need to cite that, you heard me on this podcast or anything. Although that's nice. I actually like that. Yeah, you could say Elise sent me.
Oh God, I don't know if I want that responsibility. So, well, speaking of a demo reel, there's a lot of questions about that. People might not have, a lot of professional voice acting work, or maybe they even have professional voiceover work, but it's more narration, commercial, and not acting. So what do you want to hear on a demo reel? And for people who don't have a lot of clips to choose from, what do you suggest they look for, or what type of things do you suggest they sample for you?
If they have the ability to do multiple languages, that's always nice. It doesn't need to be long either. It should be short. That's something to showcase. If they, any kind of comedy, I think showcasing funny. Like I said, some people have written like a little short story and told it in voices. And I think that was kind of, meet my friend so-and-so, Squeaky over here. That's helpful. The thing is, I don't always rely on those, because like I said, they can be manipulated. You can easily pitch shift them. But it gives me an idea of range. There's a great one. If you go and Google search N. Reitel, ENNREITEL. He's a British actor who did all these amazing characters. And this is way back when. This is when I first started Family Guy, actually. He did this where I think he videotaped himself, but he introduced all these characters, and he did all these different voices, and it blew my mind. And I actually did. I pulled him in and hired him a couple of times. But he was able to do all these famous impressions. That's another thing. If you do an impression of somebody famous, that's helpful too, because then I can hear what your ear is, or characters. It doesn't have to be famous people. It could be characters or your own characters. Like SNL, when they do auditions, people, tape all their different characters, and that's fun to watch, so that's helpful too. You can do it on your own. It doesn't need to be professionally done.
As long as it sounds good quality wise, lock yourself in the closet.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's not ambient. It's not bouncing off yeah, exactly. And that's the other thing. When people audition, look at your levels, because a lot of people, their levels are so low that we're cranking up the computer at full blast to hear them. So always check your levels, and make sure that it's loud enough. That's a key. I forget to mention that to people. Oh yeah, N. Rytel. Somebody wrote it down. Yeah, you should check out N. Rytel. He had a really good one.
And you said earlier on, make sure you can be found, and especially when you slate, say your whole name, all of that. And someone said, will you search for details on social media or search for a website or YouTube? Are you looking for people in that sense too?
Yes, always. Always. I look for agents, managers. If there's a way to Facebook, I'll search. You'll see sometimes I post things on Facebook when I'm stuck. I'm like, I gotta find somebody who speaks, Swahili. So I'll post that, and there's been so many great people who've been. Will Choi always responds and sends me a list of people. Like, did you see so and so and so and so? So if I can find you on some kind of social media, I'm not every one of them, but if I can find your name, I will find you. But it's also good if you have my email address, make sure I have a contact number. I have a contact email address. Of course, if you're emailing me, I got your email address, so I know how to find you. But yeah, a lot of times I'll get auditions and they don't have a name. They won't label their file. And so it just comes in as MP3 or M4A, and I'm stuck. And they don't have a slate on it. They just start talking into character, and I can't figure out who it is. So I literally save those to the bitter end when I'm done with the project. And if I have a slow day, I'm going to hunt that person down. I'm going to let them know they missed out on multiple opportunities because they didn't label their flippin' file. So yeah, it's really important. Like you want to make sure you can be found. So make sure your files are labeled. And I'm very specific how I want my files labeled. I have a whole system, and I spell it out in the spec sheet that goes out with every project. Okay, that's a lie. I sent out sides recently and I didn't send the spec sheet, and then I got blasted for blasting people for not labeling it. But that went to agents. We should know better. But yeah, I have a very and usually I'll make sure that everything comes specifically labeled. Like I want their first name, their last name. If they are direct, if they're sending to me directly, or if they have no agent or manager, I usually have them write direct and then the city they're in, hyphen LA, New York, Albuquerque, Peoria, and then the role, so I know what it is. So
follow instructions.
Very much read all of the instructions. Yes.
And I know that there's actually a decent amount of people who are younger actors or hopeful actors, or I think I see some parents of young people who seem to have some kind of, instinctual voice talents. So I'm curious, when you're casting and there's a child role, what's the decision process for actually casting a child or casting an adult that sounds like or can do a child's voice? And how can a kid get into this craft?
That's a great question. A lot of times the project will dictate. If it's adult animation, usually the material is not, it's a little too raunchy for kids. So and it depends on the show. Like Family Guy, we always hired kids, real kids. Some of the shows I work on now, they're like, no, we need adults to play kids. Also, look at the cast. If the cast, like I have a show called Fairfax right now that I'm working on, and the cast is supposed to be like 13 years old. Well, it's all adults playing the 13-year-old. So if you hire a real kid next to them, they're going to sound super young. So that's part of it. Is if you look at the cast, like I have Kiersey Clemens and Peter Kim and Skylar Gisondo and Jabuki Young White, who are very much, adults playing kids, and they sound young. They're pulling it off very well. They're great. They're terrific. But I can't hire a kid on that show. It's adult animation, and the kid voice won't match the other voices because they're the age range. I just recently did We Baby Bears for Cartoon Network, and we went after real kids on that and got real kids. So there's a lot of opportunity for real kids, because there's something about kids over adults when it comes to sounding like kids. Like I said, there's very few adults that I personally feel sounds authentic, like a real kid, like that 35-year-old woman in Melbourne, Australia, who's fantastic. but there's an innocence quality that kids have that adults, not a lot of adults can pull off. And it's a matter, and they tend to blurt things. They don't just, they don't overthink things. They're not editing. They're not rehearsing it in their head beforehand. Kids don't usually do that. So that is not an easy quality to do as an adult. There's some adults can do it, but not everybody. So and I always say study, like Family Guy. Look at Stewie. He's the kid, and listen to how he delivers it. It's, it's just, it's easy. There's not a lot of edits or pre-editing or laboring the lines. So I think that's important. But yeah, lots of opportunities for kids. I don't, as long as a kid wants to do it, that's the other thing. I had an audition session where I felt like some of the kids really just didn't want to be there, and I felt for them. So because it's a commitment. It's a big commitment when you're a kid actor, parents and kids. But I'm always open to kids unless the producer tells me no kids, Linda. So I will audition both, and I'm open to adults trying it too.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question, and I saw someone submit this question, which I think is a very nice way to end. They want to know, as an actor, what they can do to make your job as a casting director easier.
Follow direction. Look at the specs, read every line of the specs, and follow direction. And if you have questions about the specs, then email me, because my email address is in the specs, and say, Linda, do you mean this? But following direction is ideal. Labeling your files, slating your name in your files, and you know what? And turning around the audition in the fastest manner possible, because I think you lose opportunity when you wait too long, if you sit on it too long. And I'm grateful to everyone who submits to me, because it makes my job easier when I have choices. So I welcome auditions. I totally welcome auditions, and I'm happy. I don't have a website. I'm sorry, I'm a dinosaur. I've been trying to build a website for like 8 years. I haven't finished it. So I'm trying to figure out a better way to let people know, that I have projects. But like I said, if you do email me once, I promise you, I keep that file. And I do, when there's projects, I will send out. And even if I don't know if you're right for it, I'll send it out and say, hey, give it a try. So, and I have a separate email address for the audio submission. So please, 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 if you do get something from me, please use that separate email address, because Gmail will lock me out and it's not fun.
You don't want to go to Gmail jail again.
Hate it. It's like 24 hours. One day they locked me out for 3 days. I couldn't answer one email. And my emails pile up. Like I clear them every night. So it was bad. I suffered it because it took me a week to get caught up after that. Not fun. And then I get nasty phone calls like, why aren't you available on email? Like, because I got locked out because somebody's emails. Yeah. So no. Yeah. If just one email. If everyone sends me one email, and like I said, if we did it from we'll do A to D for the first 2 days.
Last name or first name?
Yeah, first name. E through. Some people only have first names. E through G, H through L, M through what? P.
Sure.
M through Q, R through T, and then U through Z, and just like give it 2 days, until the last one's like 8 days or something. And that way I won't get locked out of Gmail jail. And I will find you if you get me put in Gmail jail. So.
And just a technical thing, someone asked if they should slate at the beginning or at the end of their recording.
I always like slates in the front.
Okay.
Yeah, I like slates in the front because then I know who I'm listening to. If I need to move the slate, I can move it later. But I think it's important to have the slate in the front because you know what? You're more likely to remember to slate in the front than in the back, too. But if you forget to slate in the front, back slate it. Okay, it's okay. It's okay.
Okay. again, I could sit here for hours, and you have so much great advice and so much great experience, and you do so many cool projects that we could just talk all day. But I'm going to let you go and get back to work, since we covered the fact that voiceover has not stopped during this time. So you might be one of the people in Hollywood who's busier than ever.
And Julie Ashton, and I can name a bunch of people. Ivy Eisenberg.
These voiceover teams are the ones who the work never stops. But thank you so much for taking so much time. Thank you for being so generous to share your email address. For those of you who didn't catch the whole thing, this will go up on Backstage's YouTube in the coming weeks, so you will not miss out on the advice. And thanks everyone for joining. Thank you again, Linda, for donating such a generous amount of your time. I hope everyone stays healthy and enjoys the rest of their day.
You, Elise. So everyone, you need to thank Elise too.
I'm just here facilitating. I'm getting the great advice out of you.
Great. Always great. It's always my pleasure.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. And the slate will be back with more tomorrow. Oh, actually later today. So don't miss it. All right, bye.
Bye, Elise. Thank you.